Tuesday, once again, tourist season heating up, and today we're discussing auto versus pedestrian situations that seem to happen all too often here in the Low Country. Attorney David Aylor, one of the Holy City's biggest attractions himself, joins us to talk about one recent case in particular. Counselor, thank you so much for coming back on the program. Let's talk about this. It happened outside of Avondale. We had a young person hit, unfortunately, by a car, and it seems like it's something, again, that happens so often here.
Yeah, it really is, and I think there's a lot of different reasons for it. One of it is the traffic flow. We've heard of some, horrible tragedies in the last year or two down on the crosstown on 17. This is over in the Avondale area, where over the last few years we've seen a rise in the different restaurants and bars and things, which is great for the economy. Unfortunately, sort of the traffic patterns and things, it makes it difficult for the pedestrians. So you have these situations that happen, and oftentimes they don't really know exactly how it happens.
So let's talk about the law as it regards to this issue, because, often everyone knows that you have to go to a light, you have to wait for the crosswalk before you cross the road. Some states have, pedestrians get the right of way all the time, that cars have to stop. So which is it here in South Carolina, and what do you need to know?
Well, that's a good question. We also run into this issue sometimes with people on bicycles, skateboards, and things like that. The bottom line is, as a pedestrian, you have to follow the traffic laws just as if you were a vehicle. So, for instance, when you're at a crosswalk, you have to wait to the light, and you need to cross at the crosswalk. Everybody makes jokes about jaywalking tickets and things like that, but they're a legitimate issue. And the issue is because when people cross at the wrong section of the road, oftentimes that causes a blind spot for a driver, and you have these accidents. So they can be cited. They also can be found at fault for the accidents. Unfortunately, oftentimes there's not a good trail of witnesses or from the incident, as opposed to a car wreck where you have two vehicles and you can reconstruct it. So many times you have drivers that claim they shouldn't have been at fault, and then vice versa. So what I suggest most people to do is, if they're involved in that, is to get an attorney, have them bring in someone to do an accident reconstruction project, because you really just don't know. But the bottom line is, the drivers of the vehicles are just as responsible as, of course, the walkers, and the walkers sometimes take that for granted.
Absolutely, it is. Not to mention the stigma of having to live with that fact that you've gravely injured somebody, or in worst case scenario, killed them. That's going to haunt you for a really long time to come.
Absolutely. I mean, you have the personal conscious side of it, but then again, also, there could be a criminal side of it. It could be a reckless driving. If alcohol, of course, is involved, even if it's not your fault, you could still be charged with a DUI. So it's important, particularly if you're going to be driving around those areas. There's going to be a lot of folks downtown over the next several months. Of course, the tourism season as it warms up. And of course, Avondale and other areas where you have a lot of walkers, people coming from restaurants, stores, bars, things like that, whether it be driving too fast, text messaging, you've got to really pay attention, because you can get yourself in a very sticky situation quickly.
I certainly do. Let's talk about insurance as well. Obviously, getting into an incident like this is going to get your insurance rates to go up. Skyrocket.
Well, and potentially even drop, depending. I mean, because you're talking about some serious medical bills. I've been involved in some cases where, obviously, even at a slow speed, a collision with a pedestrian is going to cause some serious injury. And if they do, in fact, find you at fault and you're not able to deflect that in any way, just from an insurance side, outside of your driver's license or any potential criminal charges, you're going to have a headache.
How about another scenario? Let's take that Avondale area. Say someone is walking across the street at night. They're wearing dark clothing. You can't see them. You have no idea that they're even in the roadway. Is that still you're at fault for that as a driver?
Well, and that's where you're going to have a lot of these gray area cases where people end up having to bring in experts and things like that, because, often they'll say in those situations, I didn't see anybody. There was nobody out there. And you have to determine whether or not the person that was crossing in the right section. If they weren't, then more than likely than not, it would not be the driver's fault. It would be the pedestrian's fault. Pedestrians too often take advantage of situations trying to cross in different areas and don't realize the risk they're putting themselves in.
So certainly, to recap, if you do get into a situation like that, make sure you call an attorney and get that accident reconstruction. But also, drivers out there, slow down, and pedestrians, make sure you obey the rules of the road. Right. Look both ways before you cross.
Exactly. Try to make sure you cross in the right areas.
Indeed. David Aylor, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Do appreciate it as always. Much more Low Country Live after the break. Stick around.